On January 13, 2006, at 12:38 p.m., an urgent call reached the police control room in Buenos Aires, Argentina's capital. The caller, visibly panicked, reported that 5 armed robbers had stormed Banco Rio, taking 23 employees and customers hostage. This news sent shockwaves through the police department. Such a brazen act in an affluent part of the city could severely tarnish their reputation. Without a moment's hesitation, police sprang into action. Within minutes, the once tranquil street was transformed into a chaotic scene, filled with blaring sirens and a convoy of police vehicles. Approximately 300 police officers, including Argentina's elite and highly trained Falcon team, swiftly cordoned off the bank. Heavily armed, clad in bulletproof vests, and equipped with modern communication gear, commandos took up their positions. Some were silently deployed onto the bank's roof, while snipers strategically positioned themselves on nearby high-rise buildings, their rifles aimed directly at the bank's entry and exit points. As news channels caught wind of the high-stakes drama, dozens of OB vans and camera crews descended upon the scene, turning it into a media spectacle. Soon the entire nation was glued to their television screens. In mere minutes, a quiet street had become a tactical war zone, with all eyes fixed on the bank where a battle for life and death was unfolding. Inside the bank, the hostages' lives hung by a thread, their danger escalating with every passing second as the robbers held them at gunpoint on the floor. One robber, dressed in a gray suit, grew increasingly agitated by the police encirclement, fearing an imminent surprise attack. When a police negotiator attempted to communicate via microphone, the gray-suited robber, who identified himself as Walter, responded with a furious warning: remove the snipers from the roof immediately, or he would begin executing hostages one by one. The police had no choice but to comply. A few years prior, a similar hostage situation had ended in tragedy, with both robbers and hostages killed during a police operation, spiraling into a national scandal. No one dared risk repeating that mistake. The police continuously appealed to Walter and his associates to release the hostages, promising to meet any demands in return. A tremor of nervousness was now discernible in Walter's voice. After a brief hesitation, he released a bank guard as a show of good faith. Upon exiting, the guard immediately briefed the police on the situation inside, confirming that the robbers were armed with guns and bombs but appeared rattled by the police presence. Following this, the robbers released 2 more hostages at the police's behest. This led the police to believe that the perpetrators were not inherently violent and sought a peaceful resolution. The atmosphere of negotiation gradually shifted, making it seem as though the overwhelming police presence was pushing the robbers towards surrender. Their demeanor suggested they regretted their actions, convincing the police that the situation was under control and arrests were imminent. However, the robbers then made an astonishing demand that left everyone bewildered. They requested pizzas and soft drinks be sent inside for themselves and the hostages, stating they would consider surrender terms afterward. This was an odd request. How could robbers, surrounded by over 300 heavily armed officers, be thinking of pizza? Yet the police agreed, and within 30-40 minutes, pizzas were delivered. Outside, police stood with weapons drawn, while inside, robbers and hostages shared a pizza meal. At one point, the robbers even sang happy birthday to a bank employee. This peculiar behavior solidified the police's belief that these were not dangerous criminals, but misguided individuals who would soon surrender. The police, now considerably relaxed, simply awaited the robbers' surrender and the release of the remaining hostages. But then, all communication from the robbers ceased. The police repeatedly tried to re-establish contact, but for nearly 3 hours there was no response. Afternoon had turned into evening, and police anxiety mounted. They feared the robbers, in desperation, might have harmed the hostages. Meanwhile, the media broadcasted the entire operation live, captivating the nation. Amidst escalating pressure, at 7 p.m., a special forces team, heavily armed, breached the bank with a powerful explosion. They expected a shootout or a surrender, but upon entering, the officers were stunned by what they saw. The bank, which hundreds of police had surrounded, was empty of robbers. All hostages were safe and unharmed, yet the thieves had vanished without a trace, as if swallowed by the earth or sky. After safely evacuating the hostages, the entire police team and a special unit of detectives began a meticulous search of every corner of the bank. Detectives scoured all floors but found no missing money nor any signs of struggle. The question lingered. If these robbers hadn't stolen anything and hadn't harmed any hostages, what were they doing there? The answer soon emerged. When detectives reached the bank's basement during their search, what they discovered left the entire team speechless. Hundreds of sturdy steel safe deposit boxes lined the walls, expertly targeted and emptied. These vaults contained the generational wealth and countless treasures of the city's affluent and VIPs. The robbers had meticulously cleared 143 of the 400 vaults, making off with approximately $20 million in assets, and had skillfully disappeared. This revelation floored the police, but the real shock came when they found neatly arranged toy guns on the floor. Police officials were mortified, realizing that the gang that had held the entire government and security apparatus at bay for hours had not even possessed real weapons. Even the bombs found were fake. The cunning robbers had also left a handwritten message. In a neighborhood of rich people, without weapons or grudges, it's just money, not love. The police now understood they had been caught in a masterful mind game. The shrewd thieves' objective was never bloodshed, but rather to keep the police entangled in confusion and a psychological game, buying themselves time to commit the robbery and escape through a secret route. But the biggest question remained. Where had they gone? Police were stationed at every bank exit, and the area was completely cordoned off. How could they have simply vanished? Searching for this answer, detectives began a deeper investigation of the basement, revealing a sight that made their jaws drop. Behind the wall where the safe deposit boxes were located, there was a large hole leading directly into a sewer, which opened onto the main road near the bank. The police now understood. While some robbers upstairs, armed with fake guns, wasted police time with negotiations and orders, their second team downstairs was calmly emptying the bank lockers and then escaping through that secret tunnel. Police, commandos, and detectives could only stare at each other in disbelief. This was the biggest and most cunning robbery of the century, where the police stood guard outside while the thieves escaped with $20 million without harming anyone. Following this astonishing heist, the reputation of Argentina's police and administration was on the line. Yet, from the outset, the police were empty-handed. They had no faces, no identities, as the robbers had worn masks throughout the entire operation. Forensic experts began collecting fingerprints and DNA samples, but here too the robbers displayed cunning. They had scattered fake hair, acquired from beauty salons, throughout the bank to mix DNA samples and complicate the investigation. Police scoured all CCTV footage from the bank and its surroundings, but the robbers had worked so cleanly that identifying them seemed impossible. During this time, police received a crucial lead when they discovered a small rubber boat in the sewer line, likely abandoned by the robbers in their haste. The boat bore a distinctive mark, leading police to believe they might trace the buyer, but again, they were met with disappointment. The purchase had been made in cash. While the police relentlessly pursued the robbers, an unusual debate erupted on Argentine TV talk shows. Some condemned the robbery, while others lauded the thieves as geniuses, becoming their fans. Radio shows were inundated with calls, and surprisingly, most callers supported the robbers. One caller even stated that they had robbed the rich without taking any lives, and were therefore heroes. Soon, toy guns became the symbols of this robbery. Newspapers published images of forensic teams bagging children's plastic pistols as evidence. The pressure on the police intensified, leading them to launch Argentina's largest manhunt in history. Days turned into weeks, but no trace of the thieves or their whereabouts has emerged. The cunning of these robbers was evident in the fact that by the time police stormed the bank at 7 p.m., they had not only completed the robbery and escaped but were likely sitting at their hideout, watching the live operation unfold on TV. But how was such a precisely planned robbery executed? The mastermind behind this heist was no ordinary criminal, but an artist named Fernando Araujo. Fernando was highly creative and sharp-minded, though his thoughts often drifted towards illegal activities. Ideas for thefts and robberies would come to him like movie scripts. The first time the idea struck Fernando was after the failed Ramallo heist in 1999, where innocent people were killed by indiscriminate police firing. He envisioned a robbery entirely devoid of violence. He was so excited to execute this plan that even though the robbery took place in 2006, he began preparations 3 years earlier in 2003. For the heist, he chose Banco Río, a bank known for holding the money and gold of the city's elite. He then rented a house near Banco Río and began exploring the sewer tunnel located beneath the bank a short distance away. He knew such a large and complex undertaking couldn't be done alone. He needed someone he could implicitly trust, and who possessed exceptional technical skills. That's when he thought of his old school friend, Sebastián García Bolster. Sebastián was a skilled mechanic, a wizard with machines. One day, Fernando Araujo proposed to him, "Friend, what if we robbed a bank and then vanished without a trace, leaving the police completely clueless?" Sebastián was astonished, initially thinking Fernando was perhaps under the influence, speaking fancifully. Despite being childhood friends, the two were quite different. Fernando was a free-spirited artist, always engaged in eccentric pursuits, while Sebastián was a family man who lived his life by the rules. However, Fernando knew Sebastián could be the backbone of the entire mission. So, Fernando gradually began to emotionally and logically draw him into the plan. At that time, Fernando Araujo was going through a painful breakup. To escape his loneliness, he had completely covered the windows of his loft with black paint, blurring the distinction between day and night, isolating himself from the outside world. He cultivated high-grade marijuana there, spending all his time intoxicated, watching films and documentaries about bank robberies. For hours, he meticulously studied the mistakes of past robbers, aiming to design his heist as a perfect operation. He hoped that seeing him in such a state would compel Sebastián to help. Fernando had another compelling reason to persuade Sebastián. At that time, Argentina was grappling with a severe banking crisis known as Corralito, which restricted people from withdrawing money from their own bank accounts. Millions of people's savings were trapped in banks, and public trust in the banking system had completely eroded. Sebastián was also a victim of this crisis. His family had lost their life savings, fostering deep resentment against. Fernando leveraged this anger, assuring him that the robbery was not just about making money but also a way to exact revenge on the system. Once Sebastián was convinced that no one would be harmed and no real weapons would be used, he agreed to become part of the mission. This marked the beginning of planning that would make this robbery the heist of the century. For nearly 2 years, Fernando meticulously worked on every minute detail. First, he thoroughly understood the bank structure, acquired secret maps of the sewer lines, and devised a plan to construct a 15-meter tunnel connecting the bank vault directly to the storm drain system. Its entire operation was divided into 2 phases. The plan was for the first team to enter the bank through the main gate, take employees and customers hostage, and keep the police engaged in negotiations, ensuring all attention remained on them. Meanwhile, the second team would access the bank's basement vault via the sewer line and the tunnel, executing the actual robbery. The plan dictated that once the work was complete, all robbers would escape through the same tunnel, while the police above at the main gate would still believe the thieves were inside. To perfect this plan, Fernando conducted months of reconnaissance inside and outside the bank. He studied the routine, behavior, and psychology of every employee, from the manager to the guards, to anticipate their reactions during a hostage situation. They even added weights to the toy guns to make them feel like real weapons, preventing any suspicion. Every detail was meticulously prepared, making it not just a robbery but a perfectly executed blueprint. However, 2 people were insufficient for such a massive mission. Fernando needed seasoned players who could remain calm under pressure. Through some contacts, he met Ruben Beto de la Torre and Dog. Beto and Dog were masters of such robberies, having been members of the famous Super Banda gang in the 80s and 90s. Next, Luis Mario Vitet, Selenés specifically chosen for this task, that joined the planning. Vitet was not only a cunning thief but also a passionate actor. It was Vitet who would later become Walter and engage the police in conversation. Additionally, a driver named Julián Zalo Echevarria was involved, tasked with helping them escape after the robbery. Since the sewer line opened directly onto the main road, exiting there posed a high risk of capture. To mitigate this, they devised another clever plan. They drilled a hole in the bottom of their van, arranging for Julián to position the van precisely over the manhole cover during their escape. This way, all robbers could emerge from the sewer directly into the van, disappearing without attracting any attention. The plan was ready, but the most crucial task was now to construct the 15-meter tunnel connecting the bank to the sewer lines. Building that tunnel proved to be the most challenging part of the mission. Even making a small hole with an axe took an hour. To excavate the tunnel, they used a 220-watt generator and an electro-pneumatic drill. For nearly a year, they descended into the foul-smelling, dirty sewer water every night, attempting to dig the tunnel using machines and hydraulic jacks. However, their plan frequently stalled. The water level in the sewer often rose, halting their work. To overcome this, they built a small dam inside the sewer to control the water flow. They also had to use small inflatable boats to transport the stolen goods out of the bank. After immense effort, they finally managed to reach the basement wall of the bank, where the safe deposit boxes were located. After extensive preparation, January 13, 2006, was finally chosen for the robbery. That morning around 10 a.m., the Banco Río in Buenos Aires opened, and customers began to gather as usual. A short while later, Fernando, with 3 of his associates, entered through the front gate, while the chief engineer, Sebastián, waited for a signal in the tunnel below. Outside on the street, Julián Zalo Echevarría sat in his van, monitoring the entire operation. Around 12:30 p.m., the first phase of the plan began. The robbers, armed with fake weapons, took 23 bank employees and customers hostage, and Vitet, dressed in the gray suit as Walter, began to ensnare the police in his web of conversation. As soon as the signal came from above, Sebastián, via the tunnel, breached the bank's basement wall and entered the vault. Sebastián and Fernando, using electropneumatic drills and hydraulic jacks, systematically broke open 143 safe deposit boxes. Gold bars, diamond jewelry, cash, and millions in assets were then bagged and loaded onto inflatable rubber boats. Upstairs, amidst a pizza party, negotiations, and media coverage, the police believed they were wearing down the robbers. In reality, they had fallen into a trap. By approximately 4 p.m., all the work downstairs was complete. The thieves then traveled through the tunnel for about 10 blocks to a manhole where Julián was waiting with his van, and they escaped with all the loot. This meant that for about 3 more hours, the hostages remained inside unnecessarily, and the police waited outside, under the illusion that the robbers were still in the bank. At 7 p.m., when the police stormed the bank with an explosion, they found only terrified hostages. The robbers, their treasure, and their true faces had all vanished. More than $20 million in assets had been stolen right under the police's noses, completing the largest non-violent robbery in Argentina's history. Afterward, the police spared no effort in trying to apprehend the thieves, but they remained elusive. For weeks, hundreds of witnesses were interviewed, and thousands of hours of CCTV footage were analyzed, but to no avail. It seemed the thieves who had pulled off Argentina's biggest robbery would never be caught. But as the saying goes, no crime is perfect until emotions are involved. The thieves had evaded the police, but they couldn't escape a trail from within their own circle. One day, a woman approached the police, claiming to have information about the Banco Rio heist. Initially, the police found it hard to believe that this woman knew something about robbers they had tirelessly pursued day and night without any leads. But as proof, the woman handed the officers a piece of jewelry that had been stolen from one of the 143 safe deposit boxes. Astonishingly, this woman was none other than Alicia Tuditulio, the wife of Ruben Beto de la Torre, one of the key figures in the robbery. After the heist, when Beto received his share of the millions, he had prepared to abandon his wife for a younger, more beautiful mistress. When his wife discovered this in a fit of rage, she divulged everything she knew to the police. What followed was swift action. The police first apprehended Beto, and with his help, Fernando Araujo and the other thieves were also arrested. When the case went to court after their arrests, Argentina's legal system faced an unusual predicament. The prosecution sought to prove it was a major and dangerous crime. However, the defense flipped the script. They successfully argued in court that all the guns used in the robbery were fake, and no hostage had been harmed. According to Argentine law, without real weapons, it could not be considered a common robbery. This single argument significantly reduced the thieves' sentences. In February 2010, the court delivered its verdict. Mastermind Fernando Araujo received 14 years, Sebastián Bolster 9 years, and due to his prior criminal record, was sentenced to 15 years. Vitet also received a lengthy prison term. However, due to their good behavior, all of them were released well before completing their sentences. Surprisingly, a large segment of the public viewed these robbers not as criminals but as heroes, for they had robbed a wealthy bank without shedding blood. This astonishing heist has inspired several famous books, movies, and documentaries. After his release, Fernando Araujo himself ventured into the film industry. The acclaimed 2020 film The Heist of the Century was co-written by Fernando Araujo. Furthermore, the 2022 Netflix documentary Bank Robbers: The Last Great Heist and Rodolfo Palacios Tzia's popular book Sin Armas ni Rencores, Without Weapons or Grudges, are also inspired by this robbery. Some even believe that world-famous series like Money Heist draw inspiration from this. Robbery, comparing the series' main character, the professor, to Fernando Araujo.